this G7 stuff continues. It's supposed to be comprised of the 7 biggest countries or economies in what used to be called the West: America, Japan, Germany, UK, France, Italy and Canada. It's a feather in Australia's cap that we got a Guernsey called an extension member. But I might add, we've had these meetings every year since 1975 and they have achieved diddly squat. And if you think of the mob sitting around the table and compare that to the first of these meetings, the G2, back in the early 40s, Winston Churchill and FDR, the comparison doesn't bear contemplating, especially with an American president whose wife now seems to be the person running the show. Biden reportedly told a group of US military personnel when he first arrived in the UK, and I quote, "I keep forgetting I'm president." And that was just before he referred to the RAF as the RFA. At one point, Boris Johnson was apparently introducing the newcomers because, like Scott Morrison, South Africa's President Ramaphosa and South Korea's President Moon were also special guests. Boris Johnson introduced Ramaphosa and Moon. Sleepy Joe interrupted, "and the President of South Africa," when Boris Johnson had just said his name. Disarmingly, Johnson paused, apparently looked pained, and said, "and the President of South Africa, as I said earlier on." Said Biden, "Oh, yeah, you did." Replied Johnson, "I certainly did." Talk about a B team. Donald Trump was right when he said, "If I were the leader of these countries, I too would like Biden far better than Trump." And then, not missing a beat, Biden's meeting with Putin, Trump said, "Good luck to Biden in dealing with Putin. Don't fall asleep during the meeting." But you've got to wonder, haven't you, whether these mediocre mob haven't all fallen asleep. It seems the only thing the G7 proved was that Western political leaders are totally consumed by woke gesture politics about climate change and other nonsense. Here they were in Britain, while China's state TV station is targeting British university campuses and offering students the chance to win thousands of dollars by becoming pro-Beijing social media influencers. Now, CGNT is the Chinese global television network. It had its licence revoked and was taken off air in Britain in February when the British media regulator found it was editorially controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, the same station is now recruiting students to become pro-Beijing social media influencers, and you can win $13,000, perhaps get a job at CTGN, so long as you promote China and counter the Western narrative. And British students have already signed up, right under the nose of the G7. In Australia, we're told that at long last, Foreign Minister Marise Payne is scrutinising more than 6,000 university deals entered into by our group of 8 universities, including China-linked Confucius Institutes. Yet the G7 leaders, led by Boris Johnson and Joe Biden, were all about pressuring the other nations into adopting so-called ambitious targets when it comes to net zero emissions. It's the most low-order issue facing the world. Next month, the Chinese Communist Party will celebrate its centenary. Do you think President Xi will be spending his days worrying about climate change, or would he be thinking about how to take over 80% of the South China Sea? When will the West, G7 or G20, wake up? President Xi's not mucking around. This is an expansionist China, so long as, well, its tentacles are so long that soon enough it'll be too hard to rid the Chinese Communist Party from our institutions. As I've just said, we've got Chinese Confucius centres in our universities. The soft power in the Pacific region, spying, the ownership of strategic Australian resources, such as ports and farmland, they don't draw the line there. What about the push for the telecommunications company Huawei to build our 5G network? The same push occurred in the UK. If Huawei was approved to build our 5G network, which it nearly was, this would have given a company that is extremely close to China's military a permanent role in Australia's communications infrastructure. I mean, this is a frightening thought. There should have only been one issue on the agenda in Cornwall, and that should have been China, not climate change. The G7 summit should have been about creating an economic version of NATO. In Cornwall, all those Western countries should have formed a new trade alliance which acts as a collective response to Chinese attempts to economically intimidate Western nations. Would China have slapped tariffs on Australian wine if it knew it would have brought a reaction from other G7 nations? The economic bullying from China must end. And those international summits should be about Western nations banding together to ensure that it does end. Not talking about net zero carbon dioxide emissions. That is nonsense crap. But what else do we expect from a world where Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the leaders of the United States and de facto leaders of the free world? Only recently, Joe Biden failed to acknowledge the 77th anniversary of D-Day, the seaborne invasion by the Allies in France on June 6 during World War II. It lasted for 2 months. By the end of the first day, 1,000 Americans lay dead. But Biden instead tweeted about the 1921 Tulsa massacre, where mobs of white residents attacked black residents and destroyed homes and businesses in Oklahoma in 1921. What else can you expect from a bloke who thought he came into the Senate 120 years ago? Watch this.
We should go back to a position of the filibuster that existed just when I came to the United States Senate 120 years ago.
How the hell can this bloke have any conversation with Boris Johnson, Vladimir Putin, and the Queen when this is his explanation, listen to this, about collecting taxes?
Somewhere between $700 billion and $1.3 trillion.
How much longer will this go on? With those two in charge, Biden and Harris, all we get are Vogue magazine covers, Biden talking about what his favourite ice cream flavour is, and a vice president who's never visited the US-Mexico border to resolve the immigration crisis, even though she says she has. I mean, if you were China's President Xi, would you be laughing? What do you think? Email me, alan@skynews.com.au, or the text line 0414 000 848.